Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Late Saturday night, Coach Sark, the Texas Longhorns, they land a commitment in the 2026 cycle that fires me up, and I think should fire up a lot of Texas fans as well. Four-star defensive lineman Dylan Berryman committing to Texas. This kid freaking rocks, and he freaking rocks at the stuff you want him to do. 6'2", 315. This dude's a fire hydrant in the middle of that defensive line. He is a guy that is as physically imposing at the point of attack as you'll find any defensive lineman across the country. And the reason I choose to highlight this is, Dylan Berryman is probably going to be one of the more underrated football players for this Texas team over the next 3 to 4 years, because I don't think he's going to be a guy that goes for 10 sacks and goes for 15 tackles for loss. But he's one of those guys where you look at a player like Anthony Hill and say, hey, why is Anthony Hill as productive and as dominant as he's been in this Texas defense? It starts with guys like Dylan Berryman, who have the ability to eat up double teams and win at the point of attack at 6'2", 315. Number one, he wears 315 pounds exceptionally well. This is one of the stronger defensive linemen that you see in the 2026 class. But with those low pads and that powerful lower half, this is a kid that doesn't lose at the point of attack. This is a linebacker's best friend. And so I look at Dylan Berryman and say that this is the kind of guy you need these kind of guys on a defensive line if you want to have the play that you've had from your linebackers over the last couple of years. The second thing that fires me up, Coach Sark's commitment to having the best line of scrimmage play that we see across the country. And you look at it and say, I think Coach Sark knew, especially with Texas going to the SEC, that if we want to compete for SEC championships, if we want to compete for national championships, we got to look like teams like Georgia and Alabama. Not only has Texas gotten to that point, you could make the argument that rolling into 2025, they might be the most impressive line of scrimmage program that you see in the country. Talk about the real reasons that Texas is a national championship contender every single year the last couple. I think it starts with what they've done along the lines of scrimmage. It's going to be something that the national media ain't going to talk about, especially when you have a quarterback like Arch Manning. You got a wide receiver like Ryan Window, and you have a guy like Coach Sark, who is a wizard at calling an offense. All the national media attention is going to go to the flashy parts of this Texas offense. And look, rightfully so. We expect Arch Manning, Ryan Wingo, and this Texas offense to be damn good. The real reason I look at this Texas team and say I'm picking them to win a national championship in the 2025 year is what they've done recruiting the line of scrimmage and what they've done developing this position as well. I mean, go back to 2025. You talk about Justice Terry, talk about Lance Jackson, Myron Charles, Josiah Sharma. And you fast forward to 2026, we're going to talk about some of the other names that Texas is going after. The commitment by Coach Sark to establish the line of scrimmage, to be dominant along the line of scrimmage, that's why Texas is where they are today. And I feel very confident saying that. Now, I want to get a little bit more into Dylan Berryman, talk about what he brings to this Texas defense. I want to talk about some of the other defensive linemen that Texas could be trending for in the 2026 cycle. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the Texas fans, this is the time period where it gets fun. We saw it last year as well. As Texas rolls into these official visit weekends, as these big boy conversations and big boy decisions start to take place, I think you're going to see Texas get relatively hot on the recruiting trail. It's going to be really fun talking about some of the commitments that roll in over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, where it starts with Dylan Berryman is what he's going to do in imposing his will, you might say, in the middle of the defensive line. Whether he's playing the nose, which I think he is. The kid's born to play the nose, 6'2", 315 pounds. I think he's pushing 330 pounds. And again, it's not a sloppy 330 pounds. This dude is put together, has a lot of good weight on that frame, can play the nose, can play the three tech. And I will say this, I mean, if you're a Texas fan and you're looking at the best case scenario for a guy like Dylan Berryman, you probably look at a guy like Byron Murphy. Now, I'm not sure if I'm there yet because I think Byron Murphy's twitch was a little bit different. Very similar kind of football players coming out of high school. And as much as we started with Dylan Berryman as this, nose tackle, two gapper that eats up double teams, there is some pass rush juice to his game. He has an extremely impressive first step. And so again, is he quite the athlete that a guy like Byron Murphy was? I'm not sure if I'm ready to go there because I think Byron Murphy was kind of a freak. I do think that the upside here, there's some more upside than we appreciate. And I think what I love about Dylan Berryman is the floor is so high. Like, this kid's gonna come in and be that two gap and interior defensive lineman that you want him to. Well, let's see over the next 3 to 4 years if he can emerge as a real guy in the pass rush as well, because I do think there's a little bit of juice. There's a little bit of first step. There's a little bit of hands that you like about Dylan Berryman as well. This is a high floor football player that I think comes in and provides a very quality rotational piece to this defensive line early, can maybe emerge as a real difference maker later on in his career. Now, the next exciting conversation is, where does Texas go the rest of the way on the defensive line? Well, you had my favorite defensive lineman in the class on campus this weekend in Lamar Brown. Hey, going into the state of Louisiana once again, is Texas leading for a guy like Lamar Brown right now? No. I could see this kind of being like a Justice Terry recruitment where it seemed like Justice Terry was destined to be a Georgia Bulldog pretty much throughout the whole process. Well, I think that's kind of what we're saying about Lamar Brown as it pertains to LSU. If Texas really wants a football player, they're not afraid to push their chips into the middle of the table and go get that football player. And I look at Lamar Brown and say, if you want to have dominant defensive line play, this is probably where you want to start in the 2026 cycle. And I don't think the defensive line class is great in 2026. Last year was elite. Justice Terry, Elijah Griffin, Amari Adams. It was an off-the-charts 2025 class. In 2026, I'm not sure how elite it is. You talk about an elite prospect, though. It's Lamar Brown. Now, the difference between Lamar Brown and Dylan Berryman is I think Lamar Brown gives you a little bit more of that game-wrecking ability. You look at Dylan Berryman and say, hey, again, probably not going to be like a 10-sack, 15 TFL guy. I think Lamar Brown can. In fact, I feel pretty confident saying that Lamar Brown is going to be that guy. He's a two-way guy, could play offensive line, could play defensive line. The combination of power and athleticism and twitch, a little bit different with this guy. Now, he was on campus. We'll see how this one comes and kind of what we hear coming out of the official visit. I get the feeling that Texas might push their chips in for a kid like Lamar Brown. Here's another guy that I think Texas is probably leading for in a pretty meaningful way, and that's Jamari Carin. This is another potential game wrecker. He's a guy that probably needs to add a little bit more weight to play in the SEC, but he's got plenty of frame to do so, length and athleticism with this kid. And I think that's kind of what you're trying to do if you're Texas. You want guys like Dylan Berryman because you need guys like Dylan Berryman to have quality defensive line play, but at the same time, you want guys that can go wreck games. Texas has had a lot of success with their game wreckers in the middle of that defensive line. I look at Jamari Carin and Lamar Brown and say that those guys could be those kind of dudes. And here's another thing I'll say before we get to the other two guys that I think Texas might be going after is I think the defensive line recruiting was not as great as Coach Sark wanted it to be. And I think that's why Coach Sark had to go to the transfer portal and land, 3-4 guys in the middle of that defensive line. He's fixed it. He fixed it in 2025. You have a true freshman class in 2025 that was arguably the best defensive line class in the country. It sounds like he's going to be gunning for that again in 2026. And I think from Coach Sark's perspective, hey, we don't want to have to rely on going to the transfer portal and bringing in 4 or 5 guys in the middle of the defensive line every year. We want to get these guys out of the high school ranks. They did it in 2025. If you stack another elite class in 2026, you're looking at some of the best defensive line play that we're going to see in the country over the next couple of years, and that's been a huge part of why Texas has been so good the last couple of years and why they're going in the right direction. Last two players we'll talk about. One, Bryce Wright, going to be on campus next weekend. This is one of my personal favorites. Now with Bryce Wright, you're just not sure what it's going to look like. Is he going to get up to 290 and play on the inside, or is he going to hang out as a heavy-handed edge? I kind of lean towards staying out on the edge because I don't know if he has the frame to get up to 290 pounds. Now, if he does stay on the edge, he, to me, reminds me of Ruben Bain. Ruben Bain, a little bit of a sawed-off guy, but extremely powerful, extremely dominant at the point of attack. That's kind of the player I look at with Bryce Wright. Different kind of edge rusher than a guy like Colin Simmons. You probably call Bryce Wright a little bit more of like a Baron Sorrelli, heavy hands, and I'm disruptive, and I'm putting tackles in the lap of the quarterback. Last one, Richard Wesley. Texas is sparing no expense getting the best line of scrimmage players on campus over the next couple of weeks. Now it's just a matter of, hey, who are going to be the guys that Texas pushes their chips in to go out and get? Really, it's in my opinion, it's a great job of roster building. I mean, you look at Coach Sark, what he's done on the recruiting trail, what he's done in the transfer portal. There's just not many programs that are acquiring the talent at the important spots than Coach Sark. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.